Moustafa. He is in these key positions, being a funnel for weapons and potentially drugs coming the other way. If you believe Operation Cassandra was a $200 million drugs for weapons operation just for Virginia. I think it's going to be much more than that, with all the port cities on the East Coast, as well as a few on the West Coast, as well as Corpus Christi in Texas. But we'll see when we get there. But we know Mustafa was in at least three key positions: one for the Egyptian Revolution, one for the revolution also in Libya, and then one for the revolution, so-called revolution in Syria, these coup attempts, whatever you want to call it. I also think Turkey's going to be involved with General Flynn, not General Flynn, excuse me, with General Petraeus. I believe Flynn was trying to stop this type of stuff. But I do think this is going to figure into the picture. Now, this next picture here is Mustafa with Chalupa. This is one of the Chalupa sisters. Now, are the Chalupas just basically Brennan CIA recruits girls to drop chalupas on different various officials saying, oh, by the way, you can't do that. You're going to have to do it our way. This, of course, is Michael Weiss. We all know his story with all through the election cycle. So you can see that he's close to this kind of fusion GPS. Let's create a false reality, and then we'll go ahead and give a name to our arms and weapons and drugs funnel, like emergency task force. So Mustafa was on the Libyan emergency task force, Egyptian emergency task force, Syrian emergency task force, etc. So this is the real story of Syria, not the bombing, not the rather limited attack on the chemical weapons plant in Syria. Here's a picture that caused a lot of controversy. This picture with Mustafa on May the 12th. This is from Mustafa's timeline with Michael Flynn. And you can see clearly that Michael Flynn's jaw is clenched. He's turning away from Mustafa. It looks like Flynn's trying to meet here with the governor of Nineveh. And it looks like, which I believe is near Palestine, Lebanon area. Not exactly sure. And then Mustafa's kind of jumped in the picture. I do believe that this one picture is the whole story in a microcosm. I may as well say it now. Flynn is taking what they call a long walk, meaning you play along with something that's wrong for a long time, a long rat line, in order to discover and root out all the rat lines. And it is going to be drugs. I'm going to say again, it moved from Mena, Arkansas, up to Montreal, Trois Rivières, Hell's Angels there, moving down to Quebec City, repilling operations up there in Canada. The same operation was then moved down into Detroit, Dearborn area, then various Midwestern states as well as Virginia. Obviously, we have Operation Cassandra as a kind of a template. So in no way was I saying Flynn was in on it. What I'm saying is that Flynn is, now that he's been charged and indicted falsely with the falsified 302 that Andy McCabe prepared, he's really not in a position to run the intelligence operation anymore. There are other people who are doing that. But I'm just saying that I believe Flynn was doing the long walk inside the operation. I do believe Burgess was a key person in that operation. We're talking about ports really the whole day. And we talked about Sam Giancana and infiltrating into a Navy air station called Glenview. And this is where, again, they seem to always go to these training facilities. General Burgess was down here at Fort Rucker, where the people train Army pilots. Here was Navy pilots being trained, as well as Marine pilots and Coast Guard pilots up here at Glenview, and then later, which was moved to Great Lakes Naval Air Station. So we went to both of those locations. I didn't film Great Lakes because it's an active base, and I just didn't want to film any license plates, etc. But then we met with Robin Gritz. I think we spent maybe 6 hours again. And of course, Robin Gritz, as a whistleblower, has a lot to talk about with task forces as a key whistleblower, one from the state level, the other from the federal level. So they always have a lot to talk about procedures and so forth. But I really think at this point, Robin Gritz probably had 4,700 comments on her when she did the Dave Harris show. I believe that's his name, Dave Harris, 2 nights ago on Facebook, and Eric Trump was one of the people that commented on the video. And I really think it's important when you look at the parallel careers, the uncanny parallel careers of Robin Gritz and Andy McCabe, we really must think about declassifying the Gritz files. I want to do what I call a hands interview, where Robin Gritz just goes through her press clippings, so you can get an idea, in her own words, all the different cases that she's been involved in. I don't want to be characterizing her career. I'd rather have her go through her press clippings, just showing her hands, just hearing her talk about it. Sometimes having the press clippings reminds people of what's classified and what's not classified as well. I think Trump would do well, very well, to declassify the projects that Robin Gritz was involved in, and I'll just leave it at that. Finally, we talked about ports. We talked about the Port of Newark and Robin's interdiction of 3 terrorists at the Port of Newark. Um, these were from Tunisia, I believe. So there's going to be another revolution story there in Tunisia. I do believe Otpor is going to be involved. I do believe Muslim Brotherhood, as far as Muslim Brotherhood Cairo, is going to be involved. I do think Moustafa is the key to the Egyptian pilots, Andy's Egyptian pilots. It's going to be the key to the bombing in Chelsea, etc. We're going to get there. But here, it reminded me so much of the port shutdown after Jason and I went over to the Port of Newark, and then all the records. So that day, the system was down, and they were shipping blind, is what they called it. But then about a month later, a little less than a month later, the whole Maersk system on the 17 different ports were all wiped with a cyber attack. It's always an external attack when it's an internal wipe, usually. So I think there's a whole bunch to be gained by Trump just declassifying the Gritz files in Newark and declassifying the Gritz files in the Washington Field Office in Counterterrorism, just to unwind this whole Andy McCabe recruit terrorist today kind of system that has been working for the last 20 years. All agents need to see this now, and a lot of pieces will fall into place. Again, all this is compartmentalized, so no agent sees the whole picture, but just seeing part of the picture will help a lot of different agents. And of course, I was at the Al Hijra Mosque here. This is a screenshot of me almost exactly 1 year ago. And it was because Lee Stranahan told me AAA, Anwar al-Awlaki, AAA, was at this mosque and originally recruited the pilots for the hijacking. This is, again, I think it's going to be the 20-year center of recruiting for different operations, drugs and weapons, Awan, Contra.